Humans have asked the question since they first had the ability to expound. What is the meaning of life? Is it wealth? Is it a simple life? Is it being able to connect to others? Is it deeper than that? I love video games. What they teach, how they present information. To me, they're a more tactile way to interact with art, because I believe video games are an art form. And to me, there's a real beauty in being able to interact with art. Persona 3 Reload. What I want to discuss is the through line of theming in this game. In my estimation, the theme of the game is what it means to live, the fragility of life, and how to accept loss. It's really deep. Sometimes these themes just really need to be put under a microscope or scrutiny to really understand them. At any rate, we'll mainly be focusing on the character Aigis for the subject of the video. Her journey through nothing to emotion, to love, to loss, to pain. It's something. I think it's ultimately relatable, and I hope you get something positive out of this video. But first, some backstory on P3R and how we get to episode Aigis. Persona 3 Reload is an open-ish world game, JRPG, good God, all the acronyms, with social aspects and dungeon crawling. You use your personas to fight the shadows. I've got a quote from Metis, one of the characters in the DLC. Quote, "Shadows are the lower parts of the psyche that everyone has. Suppressed human thoughts given physical form. When people are unable to face their darker selves, they break loose, free from all control. But sometimes, humans with special awareness can tame their shadows. Those are persona users." So seemingly, everyone, anyone, can manifest a shadow. We all suppress our thoughts. Human existence is difficult at times. Is your shadow already here? In Persona 3 Reload, in order for our characters to awaken to their persona, they must be willing to accept their true self and be willing to accept death as an outcome in all scenarios of life. Let that sit for a second. I mean, it's one thing to accept death, because death comes for everybody. But to do it in the way that they manifest it in P3R, with they have evokers that manifest their personas outside of them because they basically do the thing. It's just kind of crazy to think about if you think about the way that they evoke their persona. In the game proper, we play as Makoto Yuki, a kid that just moves into a new dorm, eventually learning that he has a persona and can fight shadows in this thing called the Dark Hour. The hour is an hour in between midnight and the following day that only persona users can comprehend and interact with. Everyone else is a transmogrified coffin. The team learns from Ikutsuki, their school club advisor, that in order for the Dark Hour to disappear, they must defeat the 12 shadows that represent the major arcana tarot cards. To that end, they form the Specialized Extracurricular Execution Squad, SEES for short. Months passed after defeating a couple of those shadows, and eventually Makoto meets Aigis. Aigis is a robot, mostly. She was a machine designed to destroy shadows. Shadows are manifestations of the self, as we've mentioned. They are the main enemy type in this game. Having an ability to fight them is very important. Heck, having a weapon specific to it takes the cake. And she excels at it. Robots notoriously don't have emotions, so she doesn't have to get caught up in extracurricular thoughts. It's made clear that she's a traditional robot. Her only directive is to protect Makoto at all costs. This goes so far that she'll just barge into Makoto's room when he's sleeping and just stand guard and just be like, yeah, I want to protect him. And Yukari's like, but he's sleeping. And Aigis is like, I don't care, I want to be here. And I think that's really adorable. But that sort of way of thinking kind of informs the way that Aigis thinks. She doesn't have like a social conscious awareness to how her actions are received by others. She really is just doing the thing that she knows that she needs to do. It doesn't matter how it affects people. Mindless, almost in a way. No social awareness. A human trait that she just doesn't possess, which just further underscores her personality at this point in the game. So she does join the team as a shadow suppressive weapon. She eventually does help them defeat all 12 major shadows. After the team believes the Dark Hour is over, because they've defeated the 12 shadows like Ikutsuki says, Ikutsuki lays his plan to bear. He uses Aigis to trap the rest of SEES in front of Tartarus. He wanted the kids to destroy the 12 shadows. That much is true. However, his goal for it was different. He in fact wanted to bring about the fall, doomsday, if you will. Nyx herself, death incarnate, coming to this earthly plane of existence to reset the world. That's what he wanted, and that's what he accomplished by manipulating the SEES squad. Aigis is later freed from her machinations over Batri by believing in her team and helping them, shattering the programming that kept her shackled by Ikutsuki. She's now unleashed the floodgates. She doesn't know it yet, but this really is where her story begins. She eventually fights Ryoji, a manifestation of Nyx, and more or less perishes. The manifestation of Nyx that Ryoji brings is just too powerful for Aigis to handle. She wants to cease to exist, since she wasn't able to fulfill her only directive of life as she knew it at that point, which was to protect Makoto. Just think about that for just a moment. Could you imagine how that must feel? So worthless that you would rather cease existence. I mean, it's hard to comprehend. From her perspective, she only ever had one thing to do and she couldn't. The weight of the world is on her shoulders at that point. Everything that she knows is making her feel unworthy. And that's the first inclination that she has a semblance of human emotion. And I would like also just to put a side note. It's very depressing. And I say it so incredulously, not to dismiss the fact that there are absolutely people in this world, there might even be people watching this video, that feel exactly like Aigis did at this point in the story. And all I want to say to you is, you are worthy. You are worthy to be here. There's a wealth of life waiting for you to live it. I know this to be true. Ryoji is a human-looking manifestation of Nyx. He's there to warn SEES about the fall and how to stop it. The problem was, there really is no way to stop it. Fighting Nyx is nigh impossible since she's literally death herself. The only other option that Ryoji gives SEES is to just let Nyx bring about the fall and reset the world. And SEES obviously is like, what the f*** are you talking about? We love this world and I love my friends, basically. Which makes sense. SEES doesn't like this. They want to fight, and they eventually do. Aigis is eventually repaired towards the end of the Persona 3 Reload story, but her computer software somehow gained the ability to develop human emotions. At first she doesn't understand them, but as with any emotion, you need to sit with it to understand it. And she did, time and time again. And that is amazing human resilience. A trait that she's never showed before, but she continues to show it in her social link, where you can still play as Makoto and understand her journey from his perspective, which I think is really cool. Such strong human will has to exist for that to be something you continually come back to. And I think that's admirable. And I think we all have that will inside of us. I truly do. I just think we forget that sometimes. And we're put down by the things of society that hold us, make us feel like we don't have that will. But we always do. We always do. Imagine being told you're a robot. No human qualities about you. You have no concept of what an emotion is. But then you start developing these things called emotions. They make you feel things. And that's at odds with your nature. So who are you really, Aigis? This is something I imagine that she's asking herself toward right at this point in the story. We're coming up towards the final conclusion of P3R. This is a lot to deal with, especially with what's coming. And she feels things for Makoto. Why does my chest feel tight when I talk to him? Why don't I want to be without him? That must be so difficult and feel so alone. I mean, she's the only one that can have that experience, you know? She's a robot that gained sentience. She must feel so alone. Then the events of the end of Persona 3 Reload pass, and she's absolutely devastated and even more alone. She wishes so badly to just become a mere machine once again. She felt so guilty about not facing Makoto at his burial. She doesn't feel worthy of living, of life. So episode Aigis begins. You play as Aigis. A shadow was created as a version of Aigis that was scared, unworthy, and unwilling to face her fears. That shadow became the character Metis. This DLC/epilogue follows the Seize Squad in the aftermath of Makoto's death. They're basically stuck in their dorm, and time itself has stopped. The abyss of time has opened up beneath their dorm as well. These doors are likely the cause of their inability to leave. Throughout the DLC, they're constantly wondering, why time has stopped? Why is the abyss of time here? And why is it in our dorm? Nothing is moving on. Nothing is changing. Come to find out that Metis believes that the reason that the abyss of time exists is because Seize collectively hasn't gotten over the death of their friend, their ally, Makoto, thus trapping them in their current state. So the events of the abyss of time happen. There's like 8 doors you have to go through. Dealing with those events, eventually the group comes back together to the Coliseum. They tried to talk it out beforehand about what to do with the keys that they now have the power to use to leave the dorm. They can't agree on how to use the keys, though. Do they exit the front door and move on? Or do they take the keys to Makoto's room, stay in the past, and maybe try to save him and relive that over again? And they can't agree, so they fight. They duke it out. Eventually, Aigis just does not want to fight. She loves her teammates. You can really feel it. Heck, you can even see it at the start of each of the Coliseum fights. Every time it starts, shows the enemies, pans over to Aigis from a side shot, and you can see her side profile. And it's just like the most downtrodden face I've really ever seen one of those characters in that game have. Her expression is just so sad, melancholy. Like, I can't believe I have to fight the ones that I care about type of look on her face. But then something happens. It's after one of the fights in the Coliseum, but Metis eventually gets Aigis' ear, and Aigis learns something. Strengthening the bonds of friendship doesn't mean the pain of living stops, as pain is just a natural part of life. She also learns that she can still fulfill her promise to Makoto in this conversation. To me, this means everything. To me, this means life has pain. It's unfortunate. It's the hardest thing that you'll have to feel, is the mental, the physical pain of existence. You can't continue to stay mentally in the past because it's comfortable. The world will pass you by. You become disconnected. There is so much struggle and strife that goes on every day, on every second of this world. But no matter how difficult it is, or how difficult it may seem, we, humans, are built for it. And we find new ways to push through it or beat it. As hard as it is, the hope that a brighter day exists for you is what is meant to keep you going. It took me a long time to believe that, personally. And I really think that's why this game resonates with me so much. The way it presents that message to me is just very, very beautiful. So Aigis decides that moving forward is the only way forward. You can't live life in the past. She found the answer. Her answer to life was to believe, to have hope, to honor her friend, to take his sacrifice and cherish it. Just, I would say, the best outcome you can have given the circumstances. The best thing you can do for loved ones that are no longer here is to honor them, to cherish them. Let them know they lived an absolutely beautiful life. And yeah, they aren't here anymore, but that doesn't matter. They paved the way for a brand new day, and I just learned how to accept that. Life has so much pain inside of it, a lot contained inside of 100 years or so of human life. But the pain isn't the emotion to focus on. It's love. It's compassion. It's kindness. It's happiness. Forging a future ahead with those as your goals, you can lead a better life. We all have a path. I just found her answer. But remember, the answer may be different, but there is one for everybody. Thank you.